Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am Kelly and my co-host is Mr. James. What's going on, dude?
It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Another beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be mine? Won't you be mine? I never liked that show. I was never a fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Really?
No, I used to like Sesame Street though. That was my jam.
Oh, I like Sesame Street.
I like Sesame Street.
I like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood too, though. I always thought the one chick was mean, though.
What one chick?
Lady Elaine Fairchild.
Oh, see, I never watched it. So
I could probably
no idea who that is. Is that a puppet? Is that a puppet?
Yep, they were all puppets.
They were all puppets except for him.
Well, no, and they had one.
The mailman was a real dude.
Yeah, the mailman was a real dude, and then they had a real chick that she'd stop by.
Nice, yeah.
I don't
never
remember
really,
her name.
never watched, never got through an entire episode of Mr. Rogers. I thought it was boring, so wasn't for me. Anyway, that is not why we are here.
That was some random shit, right?
That was some random shit. That is not why we are here. We have a guest today, James. We're here to do our podcast, That's Some Crazy Shit.
Right on.
We have a guest.
To be a part of it.
Yeah, we have a guest. Her name is Fiona Robinson Hill, and she is a tour guide for Grimm Ghost Tours in Salt Lake City. That's Grimm with 2 M's. She's also a researcher and a historian, and she is here to talk about one of the sites that you went to, which is the old cement factory.
Right, and that's where I came in contact with Fiona. Is I went to investigation there, and she was leading the tour. And she's excellent at what she does. And that place, Cal, it's active.
That's what she was saying. So she decided, was gracious enough to have a sit down and chat with us about everything she knows about the ghost tours and about the things that she's encountered. So I say we just get right to it.
Let's do it then.
Let's get to it. Welcome to the podcast, Fiona Robinson Hill, ghost tour guide and historian.
All right, welcome, Fiona. We're glad to have you here today. That's some crazy shit. Why don't you give us a little background about how you got started and what you do, and a little bit of how you got into it?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. So a bit about myself. I work with Grimm Ghost Tours, and I tour guide, paranormal investigator, historian. But everyone asks that, like, how did you start doing this? And my go-to answer is, you grow up in a house where weird stuff happens. And then you just question what's going on, why is this happening? And then you just dive a little deeper into it. And it's like, well, that damn ghost, right? That damn ghost, give my keys back, where's my wallet? That type of thing.
So are you saying that you grew up in a haunted house?
I guess that's the only possible explanation for it. Yeah.
So give us an idea of some of the things that would happen that would make you think that.
Just those type of things, like the keys would go missing. I had a wallet that went missing for like 6 months as a teenager.
Oh my gosh.
A digital camera that went missing. You would hear noises at night.
Did you ever feel scared or threatened?
Sometimes, yeah. We actually had the house come and get blessed, because especially like down in the basement, you would hear like growling noises. One time we went away on vacation, and it was the middle of August, and the house was brand new, but the property was a bit older, and we had someone come and house sit for us. And when we got back, the heat had been turned all the way up. In the middle of August, summer, hot as can be, the heat had been turned all the way up, but the house that sat on the property before us had burned down. So it was like this weird stuff happening all the time.
Very cool, very cool. So let's fast forward to now. Who says, like, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be a paranormal investigator. Like, is that what you said?
No. Definitely not. In fact, people are like, "Oh, so that's what you love to do?" And it's like, "Well, yes, but does it pay the bills?" Not necessarily. But it's something to get out of the house and something fun to do. Um, and it's just a fun hobby. And if I get paid to do it, yeah,
Bonus,
that's
huh?
nice. Yeah.
So now, Fiona, I met you through one of your investigations at the. Now I know it's an old cement factory because I grew up in that area.
Yes.
So why don't you tell our listeners about that location and some of the history about that? Because even though Kelly and I probably grew up within walking distance of it, I don't think we knew half of the history.
Yes, the old Portland Cement Works,
Right.
which is now known as Fear Factory, with the famous address of 666 West, 8 South, right? The big draw to it.
Is that really the address?
One of the buildings there, yes.
I had no idea, never made that correlation. And this, for listeners who don't know, is in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yes, yes. Downtown industrial area of Salt Lake, but it's settled right in so industrial part of the history, but also this neighborhood grew up around it for the workers who were there. So it was very convenient for them to live there and then work there because they didn't have to travel very far to go to work. And it was mostly people who were kind of that blue collar worker, but also freshly new to the United States. So you get kind of this little suburb of industrial workers living right there at this factory. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the accidents and death stories come from, are these workers in that neighborhood right there. So maybe those houses are haunted too, probably, right?
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, when we were growing up, you know, we used to ride our bikes by it, and it was always a creepy feeling. And it was we dare each other to ride from, you know, through the middle by the railroad tracks.
Oh.
You know, it was like we were even afraid to do that. It was so freaky.
Yeah, a lot of deaths took place right on those railroad tracks too, associated with the factory. So I would be scared, like just walking past it when we're doing our tours and investigations. And even in fact, when the trains pass through, you can feel that energy surge because of all the deaths. At one point, that intersection on 8th South and right there by the factory was at one point the deadliest intersection with train crossings and automobiles and people walking through in Salt Lake City because of all the accidents and deaths that took place right there.
So when did the factory become, I guess, like a haunted place? You know what I mean? Like, who said this place has activity? Let's start doing investigations. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yes. So the factory was built in the 1890s as a cement factory. And then it went through like all these deaths and accidents all throughout the 1970s when they were like, we're getting sued, we're going to shut down, we don't really need this factory here. So they kind of shut down house. And the property sat abandoned for a little over a decade. And in the 90s, the neighborhood was like, this isn't really a safe place. We're going to clean it up a little bit. But then in 2011, Fear Factory bought the property, cleaned it up, made it into a haunted house. And that's when they're like, whoa, something's going on here. What's happening? And that's when these paranormal teams came in, and it's like, yeah, it's haunted. There's ghosts here. And now Fear Factory and Grimm Ghost Tours kind of work together. And anyone who wants to do a paranormal investigation there has to book through Grimm Ghost Tours. And we kind of oversee that and make sure things are are okay and
Yeah,
taken
and no,
care of
that's
there.
good. Yeah, I like that, the fact that you had it so well organized, and then that you had different, like we use dowsing rods,
Yes.
and you had some EMF meters and stuff. I like that you had that so people could use it. And if you're in the Salt Lake area, you guys go and check this out through Grimm Tours. It's cool.
So
Yeah.
when you are doing the tours, do you know the history of maybe who some of these ghosts are?
Yes, so that's part of my job as as a historian for Grimm Ghost Tours, is to make sure we give you the accurate history of the location. And then we kind of say like, hey, this is where George likes to hang out and who you could possibly be talking to. And this is where Frank likes to hang out. He's a little bit grouchy. You may not want to talk to him sometimes. This is where Charles died, and he likes to hang out on the catwalk. So if you see or hear anything, it could be him. But also maybe you're talking to someone new. Maybe you're talking to someone we haven't talked about. And if you get a name or if you get something, let us know, and maybe we'll do some more research and we can tell you more about what's going on. So that's part of my job, is to make sure it's accurate history and then look up more history from the night and what's going on.
Very
Yeah, I like that
cool.
aspect that you knew the history of it. I thought that was really cool too.
So what are some of the things that people have seen, or what are some of the disturbances that you guys have recorded or know of?
Yes, there's a lot. It's like something new every time we go there. Of course,
Really?
it's one of the most probably active spots that we go to. And some people, if you go there and you're a little bit apprehensive, you're not going to get a lot. I tell people it's kind of like a dog, right? Dogs can sense when you're a little bit nervous. And it's the same thing with ghosts or spirits or energies, whatever you want to call them. They can tell like, oh, this person doesn't really want to talk to me. Why do I want to talk to them? But Fear Factory always has something going on there. You just have to be paying attention. And so, right, there's always something there. There's always something like following you. You can just sense it. You can feel it when you're there. So we've had like shadow figures. We've had like footsteps up on the catwalk. You can hear the footsteps. You can see someone walking up there. I've had like my ankle touched as I've been walking around, closing up for the night, and I was like, nope, not okay. I don't like that. One time I was walking up the stairs with a lady, and she smelled like her dad's cologne, and she's like, wait, I can smell that. And her dad had just recently passed like a week or so before, and she smelled her dad's cologne like as we were walking up. We've captured EVPs while we were there. There's a really good one in one of the silos that's like a swamp area, and it's like this really loud moan, and it's really creepy. So you get like all sorts of paranormal activity, like anything that you could think of has been encountered at Fear Factory, and that's why it's such a great location, because you can get anything there if you're looking for it.
And it's like you said, I think you have to be open-minded to this stuff.
Yeah.
Once you kind of free yourself up, then these things happen, and you can you experience them.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm interested, do you have the history on can you give us some occurrences of how some of these people died? When you've done the history, like some of the ghosts that you may think that you have encountered before, like how they died?
Yes. So probably the more well-known ones, and the ones that people talk about the most would definitely be George. George Howe. He died in 1900, and he's the one who was oiling a big piece of machinery, and he got his arm ripped off because he was pulled through this like gear shaft of the rock grinder. And yeah, it's really gruesome. That's why people love talking about it, because you get the ghost story and you get the bloody, gory, gruesome story. He got his arm ripped off and he like bled to death, and people found him a few hours later and he was dead. And then it was like 3 years later, the same accident happened on the same piece of machinery, where this man Frank, had his arm ripped off, and he ended up bleeding to death. And like just these weird, strange occurrences. And it was like 20, 30 years later, another man got his arm ripped off. He ended up living, but I mean, the same accident kept happening at this factory. And I always tell people there's no coincidences when it comes to ghost stories.
Yeah, I agree.
So do
I have
you
to ask you a
think
quick question.
No, go ahead, James. Go ahead.
Was it the same arm on each
Yes,
individual?
the left arm on each individual.
Oh my God.
So do you think, or is there any history of anything of maybe this factory being cursed, being built on maybe ground it shouldn't have been built on for all these? Do you know what I mean? Was it a bad?
Right.
Was it built? Was it always, I guess, a
Sacred
haunted,
ground.
sacred ground or something? Pet cemetery? I don't know.
Right, yeah. So that's the interesting thing is because you have the arm being ripped off, you have these strange fires that happen, because the first documented death that we can find is George. And then it's like almost every year after that you have you have a man who's burned to death. You have the train accidents. You have all these deaths that happen every single year. And but before that, there's this massive fire that happens in the middle of the night that nobody can explain, and it destroys a huge portion of the factory. And then before that, you have a massive windstorm that comes in. They call it a hurricane, and it destroys a whole bunch of Salt Lake, but the place that had the most extensive damage was the factory. And so you're like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, it's the ley lines, right? The ley lines that this factory sits on. That's why it's the paranormal activity. Or it's the address, the 666 West. Or maybe it is, like this ground, this property it sits on. Because if you think it's not too far from where the Jordan River is, which was for ancient indigenous peoples who lived here, was very like sacred water, right? Because they traveled, and the land near water was very important to them. So if you think about it, there's all these factors playing into this location. What is it? We don't know, but there's so many things going on with it. Maybe it's a combination of everything.
That's funny, because growing up near the Jordan River, and you saying that, the Jordan River, the entire length where we lived, we always thought it was kind of creepy and haunted, I guess, per se, right? You wouldn't, if you were walking around there at night, you wouldn't want to be by yourself. You would hear stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You would, and I remember that, but just as a kid, you're kind of writing it off, right? But now that you say that, and then you said the Jordan River was sacred, which is mind-blowing to me, because by the time we got familiar with the Jordan River, it was just a polluted river.
Yeah, it was
You know what I
Right.
mean? So to know that at one point it was sacred to them is crazy.
Yeah, like if you study like the history, which, you know, in my other endeavors that I'm doing with historical and historian research, is if you follow the movements of some of these indigenous peoples of Utah, they did travel. They didn't stay in one place. And Salt Lake was inhabited by that ancient Fremont people. And we've come across, their living spaces and everything. And because Utah was, this kind of deserted area, water was very important. So they did travel to where water was a great source to them. And so when you have this Jordan River flowing and it wasn't so polluted and so populated, it would be a great source for, animals and people and whatever, grazing and food that they could have. It is a huge source even to us right now, even though we think like, oh, the Jordan River, not so nice.
It's a lot cleaner now than it was when we were kids. Yeah.
Well, I remember growing up too, like you like hearing about like bodies found over there and stuff. I remember that. But it is a huge source to wandering people in ancient days, I guess you could say, those ancient civilizations that were here.
That makes sense, because really, it's not very far. I mean, really, we could walk within all, it was just walking distance, all that stuff. And that makes sense that that'd be tied to the water, like you said. Maybe it was. It's interesting. Who knows,
Right.
So Fiona, on the, when you're doing the ghost tours, and people come in and do these investigations, has anybody ever said they did not feel safe, or anything like that? Or I guess I'm saying, is there any danger? And this is from someone who has never gone on an investigation and probably never will, but just out of curiosity.
I'm gonna get her too.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get her
not my thing. Not my thing. But is there any danger? Have you had any cases of anybody maybe getting hurt, or you've had cases of people getting marks on them from ghost investigations and stuff? Have any of that ever happened?
Yeah, so there is a thing of like opening yourself up too much, I guess. We always tell people your best ghost hunting tool or piece of equipment is yourself. And you have to listen, like if you're feeling too anxious or if you're feeling too emotional, that's a good sign to maybe step back and, take a break from your ghost hunting, whatever you're doing, investigating, communication. Because as in life, as in death, sometimes people get a little grouchy or get a little connected or get a little too close for comfort. Ghosts, our little ghosty friends, can do that too. And we have to realize and we have to figure out when to draw that line and when to say, okay, enough is enough. I need to step back. And sometimes people don't realize when to draw that line. And so they do get a little aggressive and they get that pushback too. And so that's when you get people who don't feel so safe and don't feel very comfortable in their situations. As for, the scratch marks and things, I've never encountered that when I'm on an investigation because I make sure it never gets to that point. When I'm there to supervise our investigations, I'm walking around, I'm communicating with our people, I'm saying, hey, how are you feeling? What are you doing? Make sure you're being safe when you're doing this. Because I don't want it to get to that point. We always tell people, don't be aggressive. Don't hit that line because you don't want to get to that point. So we try to educate people on don't be like the TV shows,
Right.
because that's for
Yeah.
entertainment. So
When
we
they
try
start
to,
provoking people, it's like, that's not good, you guys.
yeah, exactly. So we try to educate people as well. That's a huge part, is education as well as the experience.
And how long is an average investigation? Like James, when you went, how long was it?
Oh, I don't remember. It was a few hours, isn't it, Fiona?
We usually book venues for like 5 hours,
Yeah,
but
or the one at the Fear Factory. How long was that one? Was that 5 hours?
it's usually from like 9 to 2, but you can stay as long as you, I mean, up to the 5 hours. But if you want to go home at like 12, you can. We don't
That's funny.
we don't force you to stay.
It didn't seem like that long, really. I mean, because like I said, so much stuff's going on and you're so involved, you don't realize how much time has passed.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Wow. Well, like I said, will probably never do one, but I live vicariously through James when he goes and does his ghost ones, but I do not partake. I'm good. I'm good.
I think you should go. But next time you come to town, Cal, we'll go and see Fiona, because they do a good job, and like she said, it's active. There was stuff going on the whole time I was there.
And if somebody wanted to reach out to you to get a tour, Fiona, how would they reach you?
You can go to the website, our company website, which is, grimmghosttours.com, where we have a Facebook page, which is just Grimm Ghost Tours.
Okay. And Fear Factory is just one of the locations, right?
Yeah. So we go all over, and not just like in the Salt Lake Valley. We go to, Asylum 49. We go out to the Merker Cemetery. We even go up to Lava Hut. Yes, it's fun. That's another one of my favorite, because that's another one where there's always something going on. We go up to Lava Hot Springs. So, I mean, it's not just the Salt Lake Valley. We're all over the place. So even people out of state, we try to go all over to meet everybody's needs.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, it scares me, but James likes it. I
think it's fascinating. I've had weird experiences, and I thought I've seen things, and like how you're saying, you got to check in with your body, because there's one time I was like really nauseated, and it was weird.
That's one of the signs.
That is crazy. Fiona, thank you so much for coming on. I love speaking with you. It's a fascinating topic, one I'll probably never dive into, but hey, thank you guys for being the ones to go out there and do it, because then you can come back and tell me all about it.
Thank you for having me and letting me talk. I love to talk about it, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Fiona. It was really nice.
Of course, you're welcome.
She was telling us things. God, it's funny. When we were little kids, we lived right in that neighborhood, and it's all the stuff we didn't know, was happening right there.
Well, it was always a creepy place, right?
Oh, yeah,
it was always one of those places that as a kid, you knew about it. You might go over there in the daytime and, but even during Halloween, you might walk past it, but you weren't going in there. I wasn't going in there.
Back then they didn't have the haunted house. It was
right. It was just an empty standalone building that I remember we would walk by, and that was a dare.
Oh, that's what I was telling Fiona. We used to dare each other to ride our bikes through the daytime.
Right. So
I might get a flat.
Yeah, very, very cool. I like when ghost investigators come on. I can live vicariously through them and through you, because I'm not doing one. But if you want to do one, you can reach out to Grimm Ghost Tours in Salt Lake City. I'm guessing that they have like a Facebook and all that good stuff. Grimm with 2 M's. Grimm Ghost Tours.
And if you're in the area, they do several different places. The cemetery that they go to I've heard from several different people that has a lot of activity too. So I might be going to that, Cal.
Well, you have fun, my friend. You can tell me all about it. I will be way over here waiting for you to come back.
What
You
would
go for it.
happen if I didn't come back?
I'm sure that you would, James.
Would you investigate?
I probably would not.
Oh,
Well,
I'm gonna haunt you then.
I'm sure there'd be
haunting you.
other people there investigating the disappearance of James Baez. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
about
nice
that.
save. Nice save.
Thank you.
I'm still haunting you.
Thank you. So, do you have any random bullshit?
Random bullshit today. Well, I think I would like to talk about the new Black Panther. Okay.
Okay.
So, I was looking at the storyline, and I was
Okay.
comparing it to the story comic book timeline and stuff. Okay. I thought it was interesting, and I think it's kind of cool. In the comic books, Namor is Atlantean. Okay, classic Atlantean, and we had an episode about them finding Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
See how I threw that in?
I like that.
Now they're gonna listen. Okay, so this time around, they're giving it a more ethnic feel. So
Because
they're
it's
Aztecs.
Because it's who's Aztecs? I'm confused.
The people that were Atlanteans, Namor, that was the name of the comic book. Now
in the comic book, these other people that Black Panther encountered were more Atlanteans, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Now
Now they're
they're
more
Aztecian.
Aztecian in the movie.
Yes. And
Okay.
also, his name in the comic book was Namor. Now it's Quetzalcoatl.
The guy that leads the Aztecians.
Yes.
Okay.
He's like him and Black Panther have history in the comic books. At one point, he almost destroyed Wakanda because he was looking for the Avengers, and that kind of pissed T'Challa off. And so they kind of got a history. I don't know how they're going to play it in the movie. Okay? But what I was asking you is, or what I wanted to ask you is, do you think that they are starting to use more ethnic spin on these comic books because of them wanting to advance the characters, make them more up to date, or do you think it's more pressure?
It's a good question. I think, James, it's probably a little of both. I think that the whole, ethnic thing in America or whatever, and actually letting the people who are that ethnicity play their role, or having people of ethnicities come in and play roles that maybe weren't necessarily thought to be for, ethnic roles.
Right.
So yeah, I like that because it just makes it more diverse. So probably a little bit of both of what you're saying. I think it's hard to say. I mean, Hollywood, you would like to think that Hollywood has a clean agenda, but they don't. So this is Hollywood you're talking. So what is their reason for doing it? I mean, probably the bottom line is money.
Yeah, the almighty dollar. But I kind of, this is the way I think of it too, though. I for me personally, being
Aztecian?
a minority, yeah,
Aztecian.
I got a little Aztecian in me. That's what was the Ancestry.com said.
Hey, I'm just checking.
So, but to me, it makes it more relatable. Because like in the world, when you look out in the world, I hate to break it to people, but it's not all just one race, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? There's diversity. You cannot deny it. So I like it. It makes it more real. And I know people are going to say, "Well, James, it's a comic book." Well, I understand that. But
the whole
you can relate
idea
to it a bit more.
But the whole idea of making comic books live action is to get you to relate to them, right? So you got to make it real so that it's relatable, right? We know that the superheroes don't technically exist, but we want to see them in our time, right? With things with technology that's somewhat familiar to us, right? So that doesn't turn into a fantasy like a Lord of the Rings stuff that we can't really relate to. So yeah, I get all of that. And James, you're probably right. I think that when you see characters when you see diverse in casting in Hollywood and movies, yeah, it does make it more real. You're right. When you do look out into the world, it is diverse. There's lots of different types of people out there. And I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, because it was like there was a big thing when they were casting for Netflix, and even for the Marvel 10 Rings. What was his name? Shang-Chi or whatever.
Oh, was there hoopla about that casting too? That Asian casting?
Yeah, because they were at first, considering a lot of Caucasian actors and actresses. They really were, or at least that's the scuttlebutt on the internet, But it's like, why would you do that? It's
Well, here's one for you, because it's Disney, right? So I was watching one of the old Disney movies that I like to watch is The Three Musketeers, and I'm talking Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, Oliver Platt, and dude who played Robin, can't think of his name right now, Chris something. He's on NCIS with LL Cool J. Can't think of his name though. But
I know who you're talking about though.
Yeah, but he played Robin in the Batman movies or whatever. So, but anyway, this movie was done like in the 90s, right? But this movie that is The Three Musketeers, that is set in France. Nobody in this movie, number one, is French. Nobody even speaks French. They all speak English. They all have English accents. It's a completely Americanized version, but they're in France. Not even the King of France has an accent. Right? So it's like, you did that, you have this movie set in this place where they're all supposed to sound like something, but they don't. That always blows my mind. And none of those guys are French. Those are all white guys.
Wait a minute. Charlie Sheen's not French. He doesn't speak French.
He didn't even remotely sound French, my friend.
I thought he was French.
What made you think Charlie Sheen was French?
I just messing with you.
But no, it just makes me laugh because there's a lot of movies that do that, right? They'll take this movie that's set in, China, but everybody speaks great English. Nobody has an accent.
Well, come on, Kel. You couldn't have an American movie and have the person be speaking Mandarin or something,
Just saying. So yes, I think they do it for both reasons, as you said at the very beginning of your question. The answer, yes.
Thank you. See how that went, people?
You can check us out on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Next week, we will have another fantastic guest. But James, I think we're done here.
You want me to wrap it up then?
Wrap that up.
Keep your minds open, people.